Hey, I'm Vinay,
I'm Sean.
and we're versus football.
On today's episode, we will be continuing our analysis of AFC East teams with the analysis of the Miami Dolphins. So previously, we did the Jets and the Patriots. Now we'll be doing the Miami Dolphins. All right. So the first position of need that we've identified for the team is wide receiver. We initially had O-line, but we decided that wide receiver was probably the most important need for the team as of now, considering that initially they were drafting third overall, where there was a lot of possibilities for them to establish maybe a stronger line with an offensive line pick or even get a pass catcher up there as well. But what ended up happening was they traded down to the sixth overall pick with a three-way trade with the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles, where the Niners are now picking third, the Eagles are picking 12th, and the Dolphins are picking sixth. So with that sixth overall pick comes, I feel like, less possibilities, and I think less of a there's less possibilities in terms of who they're going to choose from. There's less speculation, in my opinion, because not only will five players already be picked, but I think we can safely say they're going to go with a pass catcher. Probably not Kyle Pitts. I think he'll be taken within the top five. Probably not an O-lineman, because that's not like their number one need as we've identified. They're probably going to go with a generational pass catcher. In my opinion, they're going to go with Jamar Chase. Considering how dynamic he has been for LSU over the past few years. So I'm predicting that the top three picks for, first overall, you have Trevor. Second and third, it's going to be Wilson, Fields, Lance, someone like that with the top two. Fourth overall, Atlanta has reportedly put it up for sale, but assuming that they're still up there, they might take someone like Kyle Pitts, who's the best consensus pass catcher in the league. And the Bengals, I'm pretty confident, will take someone like Sewell or Slater in order to protect Joe Burrow after he almost got killed last season. And that leaves the Dolphins with the sixth overall, with which I think they'll take Jamar Chase. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Jamar Chase. He's really good at contested catch. I think the number one wide receiver in the class, it's a very close race between Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith. They're both around the same height. As Mina Kimes has put it, the only real difference is probably calorie count, just because Devonta Smith is a lot slimmer than Chase, but don't let that fool you. He is an exceptional route runner.
Right.
He is the best route runner of the wide receiving core, although Jamar Chase is still a very good route runner. Smith does it a little bit better. And then conversely, while Devonta Smith can make contested catches really, really well, Chase just does it better. So it's really about what flavor of receiver you want as your true number one receiver in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
I do think they might wind up going Jamar Chase, but there is something to be said about the chemistry that Tua and Devonta Smith have that should not be overlooked, and it would not surprise me in the least if they go Devonta Smith at 6.
Even Jalen Waddle has a lot of has a lot of chemistry, being a Bama wide receiver to whom Tua has thrown a good amount of passes to. So yeah, I would probably go Smith as well. Even going back to high school, they had a bit of they had a lot of chemistry between them. I think
Tua was the one who convinced Smith to choose Alabama. Over somewhere like the other two that Smith were seriously considering. Was Georgia and Miami, and Tua said, "Come to Alabama, we're going to light it up together." And the very next year, they won the national championship.
Exactly. And, this past season, Devontae ended up winning the Heisman Trophy, and they won the national championship again in 2021. So definitely, I think they're going to go with the pass catcher that we can agree on. I would probably gravitate more towards Chase, but in terms of chemistry, yeah, I can see how Devonta Smith or even Jalen Waddle can be right up there as well. Chase, I think in terms of his speed, route running ability, and just how long he is, and also youth and how long he has been at the top of draft boards. Even like last season when he still had a year to go in college, that this past season he played for the 2020 draft, like he was touted. If he, there were a lot of scouts saying if he had declared in 2020 for that draft, he could have gone in the top 10 then as well. Like that is how good he has been over a consistent period of time. So pass catcher, I'm gravitating more towards Chase. You're gravitating more towards Smith or even Waddle. I would say, like, I can definitely see either one happening. In terms of who they already have, Devontae Parker, after leaving the Gase system, and I keep talking about Gase because he is uniquely bad, and the string of players who have performed well after leaving his system at many, many, many offensive positions, from Tannehill at quarterback to, like I just mentioned, Devontae Parker at wide receiver, he has flourished in Miami. And it isn't exactly an offensive system. It is like Brian Flores is a very defensive-minded head coach, but he has done well with what I would say has been pretty questionable, I would say lackluster quarterback play. Tua as a rookie, we'll get to Tua later, but he has a lot to improve on. And Ryan Fitzpatrick has been very inconsistent as he has been throughout his career on any given season. Plus, Brian Flores was playing hot hands at quarterback and starting whoever he thought could give them the short-term or even game win at any given point in time, which created a little bit of instability at that position. But regardless, Devontae Parker still had a fantastic season, especially over the past 2 years in the Brian Flores system. And I think he really started doing well since the beginning of 2019, like that season where everyone thought the Dolphins were going to go winless. But he actually had a 1,000-yard season in 2019, 793 yards last year. But I think if there's more consistency at the quarterback position, he will continue his resurgence in a post-Gase system in a very stable organization. And, if you do draft another wide receiver, you can have the Devontae brothers or whoever you draft. You're not getting double teamed all the time, So double teams are being taken away from you. Sometimes they're being put on you, but then the other guy's open. You also have Gesicki at tight end, who's also a very able pass catcher. So they're surrounding Tua with all these weapons, the ones that they have, the ones that they can draft. So I think it'll make for a very dynamic offense. And they should address the pass catching position, probably wide receiver at 6th overall.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They also went out and signed Will Fuller, which is a good signing, but Will Fuller is not a true number one receiver.
Yeah.
If you put him in the slot, his speed will win matchups most of the time.
Yeah.
Cornerback threes are most likely not going to fare too well against Will Fuller, so that's going to be a mismatch to take advantage of. Mm-hmm. There's also some solid depth at the position.
Right.
They do have Jakeem Grant, who's more of a return specialist, but has performed admirably as a wide receiver. Mm-hmm. They also do have Allen Hurns now. He is often forgotten about. They've had him for a fair bit since 2019. Allen Hurns was probably an elite football player back in Jacksonville. He and Allen Robinson were teamed up to be the Allen brothers. Truly special. He did get injured towards the end of his tenure in Jacksonville, and then didn't do well in Dallas after also getting injured.
Yeah, that was in the wild card game against the Seahawks, actually. Since then, he has been on the DL for a bit, but he's a very, very good wide receiver too, very able. They have a lot of depth at the position. And even in terms of speed, Preston Williams was a very, very good backup wide receiver to Devontae Parker, very fast and great route running ability and a great pass catcher as well. Albert Wilson runs great go routes, and when he is open, gets in the open, empty field, he can run around very, very in an agile manner. Even Jakeem Grant, like you said, has a lot of ability in running the go route in an open field. So they have a lot of depth at the position, which I think they can bolster. And they can kind of move guys around in the slot as well if they need to.
Yeah. So with that being said, the next need we feel they have is on the offensive line. Since they traded away Laramie Tunsil, although they did it for a king's ransom, their offensive line hasn't been particularly great. They do have some solid players on the line. They did just draft Austin Jackson in 2020, and he left a little bit wanting, but he shows room to improve. Eric Flowers has had a bit of a resurgence in his career after being moved from tackle to guard. It seems that guard is where he fits in best. They do have Robert Hunt as a tackle slash guard. They have a lot of tackle slash guards on their roster, and I can definitely see them using pick 18 to address the offensive line. They may have somebody like Tevin Jenkins available, who, right. If you ever listen to Brett Coleman, you would know a lot about, because Tevin Jenkins might be Brett Coleman's favorite offensive lineman in this draft class. He is extraordinarily physical, can play guard, not because he can't play tackle, but just because his grip strength is off the charts, and he can move people deep into, the stands and out to the parking lot and maybe through the campus, give them a walking tour of the campus on every single snap. Mm-hmm. So,
and I also think the Dolphins have more of a need at tackle, because Eric Flowers has been a lot more effective at guard, so they've almost permanently moved him there at this point. In addition to that, on the other guard position, Jesse Davis has been the highest ranked guard on the team as per PFF, and he's been pretty solid both at guard and at tackle. He's primarily a guard, since that's what they have kept him at. So in terms of the interior, they have that shored up pretty nicely. They have 3 centers on their, well, really 4, with Michael Dieter, who plays both center and guard, on their roster. Tyler Golfier, Matt Skur, and Cameron Tom. Haven't really heard much from them at all, but I can definitely see them. To be honest, I can also see them going, if they don't want a pass catcher, given their wide receiver depth, they can either go O-line or wide receiver. I'm more leaning towards wide receiver first, and then O-line 18. Tevin Jenkins, as you said, is a fantastic tackle pick. Yeah,
he's a very good tackle. Very good. He can definitely it's a good anchor on the outside.
And it's a deep tackle draft. Like, there's a very low chance that I think all of the following guys, Penny Sewell, Rashawn Slater, Christian Darrisaw, Tevin Jenkins, Elijah Vera Tucker, I highly doubt all of these guys are going to be gone by pick 18. So you'll definitely have a shot at least one tackle that you so desperately need to make it easier for a guy like Tua to have a little more time to throw, flourish into the top 5 overall pick that we know that he can be, and not have to reinvest a high pick in order to draft another quarterback. And in order to do that, you have to address line. And of course, like I said, I'm a big line guy, because you don't only address the quarterback position when you fix the line, you address the running back position as well, which they've been struggling with after they gave away Kenyon Drake, who's flourished with the Cardinals ever since. Since then, they've had Myles Gaskin, who's been decent. Salvon Ahmed, who had like 1 or 2 pretty good games fantasy-wise. I think he crossed 100 one of them, but other than that, career's been a bit injury-ridden, and he's been switched in and out a lot. Patrick Laird, Malcolm Brown, whom they picked up from the Rams, I believe, is a pretty decent smash-mouth running back type dude. But in order to have that be as effective as it can be, you have to build up your offensive line. They could also go running back in the later rounds. There's a lot of good running back prospects, both in the draft and in free agency, that they can get later on. But in order to have all of that succeed, you have to go line, and I would say tackle with 18th overall is, I think, pragmatically what they're aiming to do.
Yeah, exactly. And you led us perfectly into the next need, which is running back. They could definitely address this really anywhere in the second round. They have Houston's pick in the top of the second round. That Laramie Tunsil trade was a masterstroke by Chris Greer. Mm-hmm. And they also have pick 50, so they have 4 picks in the top 50.
Exactly.
This year. They can address running back, mm-hmm. and either one. I can see them going with somebody like Najee Harris if he falls that far. Once again, chemistry is important. Yeah, it seems like they're building Alabama. They're trying to copy Alabama and paste it here in Miami, but they are very talented players, and chemistry is important. Najee Harris can run the football effectively. He is pretty powerful guy, great hurdling, but he's also great out of the backfield. That's one of the best aspects of Najee Harris's game. And adding that extra dimension to that passing game will give Tua a lot of room. They could also go with Etienne, who's a very good running back in his own right out of Clemson. They could go with Trey Sermon in a later round, or even Chuba Hubbard out of Oklahoma State. I don't know why he is so low on so many people's draft boards. Obviously, he's not. I don't really have him as a first round talent, but the way it's going, either the Ravens or the Browns might luck into him in a late round without even looking for an elite running back.
Exactly. So they have fallen back in terms of, the running back position and just rushing in general. Just to give you a perspective of how they did in 2020, they actually allowed an average of 4.5 yards per carry from opponents and from 412 total rushing plays, while only producing 3.9 yards per carry in 428 total rushing plays. So they had more rushing plays, but they averaged significantly, I would say, less yards per carry, because that's an almost, what is that? Like an almost 20% drop off. Let me actually do the math real quick. It's like a 13.3% drop off from your opponent. So that's a game that you have to win. They've also allowed 1862 total yards, and which is 174 more rushing yards than they produced, which is 1688, and allowed 2 more rushing touchdowns than they produced, 17 that they allowed as opposed to 15 that they have led. So these are all stats that they lacked, and usually you don't have a team lacking in all these stats in any given position, but that is a position of worry, because they definitely do have to break even at the running back position if they are to let some of the load off of Tua. And they haven't been able to do that for a plethora of reasons. Like their over reliance on the running back position, injuries to their starters, letting go of Kenyon Drake, starters not performing as well as they would have liked, and a lackluster O-line, all of which can be addressed in this draft with the draft capital that the Dolphins have accumulated. And they also got a first round pick from the 3-way trade. Is that next year or this year?
They have San Francisco's first rounder in 2022, and they sent their first rounder to Philadelphia in 2022 in that 3-way trade. But they do have a second first round pick again in 2023. So they have a lot of draft capital over the next few years. And the thing is, they are a lot further ahead on their rebuild than they thought. They are actually a good team now. That surprised a lot of us in 2020. And even with a lot of questionable areas, they performed really well with what they had. And so with the talent they're going to be able to acquire in this draft and even the next draft and the draft after that, they have a real shot at giving the Bills a run for their money in the East. Still a weird thing to say. Usually it's giving the Patriots a run for their money in the East, but it's a new world now.
Exactly. Yep, it is. I mean, this is the first time the Bills or any non-Patriots team has won that division since 2008, I believe. And only, even before that, the Patriots were winning that division for years on end, like from 2001 to 2007 and from 2009 up until 2019.
Yeah, with a 1 year drop off where Chad Pennington looked like the best quarterback in the 2000 draft class.
Exactly. And also Brady was injured in the first game.
Yeah.
So moving on, we believe that the next biggest need for the Dolphins is at defensive line, mainly at the edge position, which they definitely have been improving on, given that a lot of their low draft pick, high value picks have been panning out increasingly well. They did draft Christian Wilkins in 2019, I believe it was 27th overall. Both of him and Emmanuel Ogbah are 2 cornerstone pieces on their D-line. Emmanuel Ogbah, who is a defensive end on that team, does provide a lot of ancillary pressure to what is created by Christian Wilkins, who's, I think, one of the more underrated young defensive tackles in the league. Other than that, I think they're lacking on the line a little bit, to be honest, because a lot of the other guys just don't see a lot of playing time, to the point where you have Wilkins playing end, tackle, and even fullback occasionally. I didn't even know that. But they haven't really picked up a lot of great players, in my opinion. A lot of their linebackers have been doubling as defensive linemen. I think Andrew Van Ginkel is one of my favorites because he is a very physical outside linebacker, great strong tackler, either from a solo perspective, and he has a lot of assists at tackling as well. Forced a good amount of turnovers towards the latter half of the 2020 season. And he was, I think, one of the underrated cornerstones of that defense. He made a lot of big plays. And yeah, so I feel like they have a lot of work to do on the D line. Emmanuel Ogbah actually led the Miami defense in sacks in 2020, and he was 5th overall in the entire league in pass pressures with 54, along with 3 forced fumbles and 1 fumble recovery. Raekwon Davis actually is another D end who's been a breakout star in 2020. He was the only D lineman on the Dolphins to have a PFF grading of over 70 because he has a really good tackling ability, and he actually led the Dolphins in TFLs. I think he had a couple against the Patriots in Week 16 as well. So him, Ogbah, and Wilkins have a lot of potential on the D line, and that's a great way to kind of build around your defense on that side. So they've accumulated a good amount of tackles, TFL, sacks, QB pressures, and hurries. They haven't been able to re-sign Devon Godchaux, who got a pretty lucrative deal in New England in that very frenzied offseason that they had. But considering that they have a good young core around Wilkins, Ogbah, guys like Raekwon Davis, even Van Ginkel, like I said, who can double as an outside linebacker and as a defensive edge rusher, I think the future is bright at that position.
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head with that, and that kind of carries us to the next position of need, which is inside linebacker and outside linebacker, to put it more simply, linebacker. It took a massive step forward. There is a lot of talent there. You have people like Landon Roberts. Last year they had Kyle Van Noy, but they let him go. So they do need to look at investing in the linebacker position. They do have Bernard McKinney, who they swapped with Shaq Lawson, sending Shaq Lawson to die in Houston. Bernard McKinney is one of the better linebackers in the league. And so he will definitely add a boost to that linebacking core. And they do also have Jerome Baker, who's most notable for the 30-yard sack on Patrick Mahomes during that game in 2020 that Kansas City probably should not have actually won.
The game where Xavier Howard also had 2 picks, I believe.
Yeah. So that's kind of the game where Miami's defense really arrived.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, yeah, so they did lose Shaq Lawson, who was 6th in the league in QB pressures with 52, 3rd in the league with QB knockdowns with 28. And he also forced a lot of bad throws, a lot of which he forced against the Chiefs, like Vinay mentioned. Even a former Patriot and now, once again, current Patriot, Kyle Van Noy, he left the team, and he made a big impression as well that the Dolphins are going to have to compensate for. He recorded more solo tackles and combined tackles with 69 total. Nice. Than last year in New England, 2 forced fumbles and forced recoveries, fumble recoveries respectively, and 6 passes defensed, the highest for him in any given season, and double his career best last season. We did talk about Andrew Van Ginkel for a little bit, one of the better O-linemen and just defensive players on the team in general. A very, very, very high PFF rating for a guy who was picked in the 5th round, I believe, of 79.3. And he's emerged as a really good value player for the Dolphins. He was picked 151st overall, actually, in 2019. He's top 33 in the league in solo tackles with 33, assists with 18, sacks with 32, and forced fumbles with 15. And considering this was his breakout season, in my opinion, or on the cusp of it, he's got a lot more to prove, and he's got a lot more to show us. Jerome Baker has a knack of dropping back into coverage as an ILB and occasionally blitzing the quarterback, and playing a very good QB spy as well. He has 6 sacks on the season, and Brian Flores actually called him a pass coverage aficionado and Swiss Army knife on defense as a pass rusher from the inside. He's top 33 in solo tackles, 33, assists with 19, and has a forced fumble, which he also recovered himself as well.
So that kind of brings us to our final position, not of need, but something that definitely needs to be addressed, and that is the quarterback position. So even still, a lot of hot take analysts are, making their money by basically insinuating that Tua does not have it, which I would beg to disagree. He has shown a propensity for growth. I first heard about Tua before he went to college, actually back when he was still when he was leaving high school as part of the Elite 11, which is this massive quarterback camp that a lot of big names have gone to, and have either been a part of that Elite 11 or have come up just close, have made regional finals or national finals before ultimately dropping out of the Elite 11. And Tua was Elite 11 MVP for the 2016 Elite 11 camp, I believe it was. And when he entered the camp, he constantly drove Trent Dilfer, who was the head coach of that camp, insane, where he was not as mechanically good as he is now, and he was almost subpar mechanically, but by the end of the camp, he was probably the most proficient quarterback in terms of his mechanics. And so he can grow. He absolutely killed at Alabama, and to the point where he was almost the first overall pick in this year's draft before his gruesome injury and Joe Burrow's outstanding season. And he was still selected top 5 because he is that kind of talent, and he is extraordinarily accurate, and it does show incredible intelligence. And he is one of the hardest workers on the field.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, he went in, no questions asked. His first start was against the Rams, which, mind you, had the best defense in the NFL. They made it as far as the divisional round and even crushed my Seahawks, which I don't like to talk about as a divisional rival, and just generally. But he went in. They ranked first. Well, not currently anymore. The season's ended. But at the time, throughout the entire season, ranked first in overall defense, passing yards per game allowed, TDs per game allowed, and net yards gained per pass attempt allowed, average yards, points, and time allowed per drive. Despite that, they still won 28-17. In large part, you can say the defense, they had, I think, 2 defensive touchdowns, or one of them special teams, the other one defense. But he kept them in the game. He didn't turn the ball over. That was a game where he just needed to manage it. I don't like the term game manager, but I think that was the best, most applicable way to apply it. He did exactly what he needed to do. On that note, that's not how you can play every game, especially as a top 5 overall pick. And I think a big roadblock to his success was the really, really conservative play calling of Chan Gailey, who has since resigned after the 2020 season. And I think his really conservative play calling is what held Tua back. He just kind of was frozen there in the pocket. And despite having pretty good, in some cases, protection and blocking, he would still either look for the really big play that never developed, or he would check it down to the point where opposing defenses would be ready for it. That'd be their first kind of sign, or first read, if you will, that he's going to go short. He's probably going to throw the under, and that's how he got picked off a couple of times against Buffalo in that last game. He only averaged 6.3 yards per throw under Chan Gailey, and I expect that to increase, especially after their 56-26 loss to the Bills in their Week 17 lineup. So I do not know how they're going to approach the Tua situation. Do they have an offensive coordinator at the moment?
Right now they have co-offensive coordinators in Eric Studesville and George Godsey. But Studeville most recently before he was in Miami as the running backs coach and run game coordinator. He was the Denver Broncos assistant head coach and running backs coach for Philip Lindsay's breakout rookie year.
That's promising.
So that should help with the run game situation. And he was the tight ends coach and Godsey, who's the tight ends coach, who's also the offensive coordinator now. Was the tight ends coach in 2019 and 2020, so definitely helped out with getting Mike Gesicki to where he is now. And he's been all over, really. He was quarterbacks coach in 2014 for the Texans and the OC for the 15 and 16 Houston Texans. So not 100% sold on this combination, but if they do well, I don't really see them running co-offensive coordinator for long. So either one of them does really well and gets promoted, or they look for a new one in 2022. I feel like they should have looked for a solid permanent offensive coordinator for 2022, just because it's really hard for quarterbacks to keep learning new systems.
They brought in Jacoby Brissett probably as a backup or someone that maybe Brian Flores can play hot hands with. It's not an approach I particularly like, but Jacoby Brissett is a solid backup, and he can be a solid starter. He's a little conservative in the way he plays as well, but it makes for good competition between Brissett and Tua. Nowhere should there be any conversation of bringing in another quarterback from free agency or even drafting in the short run, barring any like major events. Yeah. No, I think they should stick with Tua, like you said.
One of the real knocks I will give Tua is, and one of the issues I have in taking a lot of these big powerhouse school quarterbacks, is their definition of open is not the NFL definition of open,
right?
Where Tua can throw accurately and can throw with anticipation at times. It's just not what he's used to, because at Alabama, that wide receiver core was so wide open, he didn't have to. And there's a difference between Alabama open and NFL open, where Tua needs to see, the helmet reach forward ahead of the defensive back, or the foot step ahead and know that guy is open, and really trust his receivers a lot more. And another reason why a lot of times Tua didn't seem as connected with his wide receivers is because he is a lefty, and that definitely plays a part. There aren't a lot of lefty quarterbacks in the league, and so receivers just aren't used to throwing lefty. Even Jalen Waddle was talking about how much he preferred working with Mac Jones, and a lot of that was probably because Mac Jones throws right-handed, Tua throws left. And there's definitely a big difference in that. So developing a lot more chemistry with his wide receivers will be a huge help in making Tua look a lot better. So and once again, I brought up the Elite 11 story because it shows that Tua can grow and grow drastically in short periods of time.
Right.
So there is definitely no reason, as Max Kellerman said, to go after a quarterback. Kellerman said that the reason they moved from 3 to 6 is because they knew they couldn't get Zach Wilson, which is absolute BS. They don't need Zach Wilson. They have a young quarterback in Tua. They just need to develop him. He's a rookie. You probably shouldn't expect rookies to be world beaters right out of the gate.
Right.
So if they can develop Tua and not actively destroy him, they might have their franchise quarterback for the better part of a decade.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up this episode on AFC East team analysis. So we're going to wrap up this Miami episode. Thank you for listening.